I'm Lily, this is Legit Nutrition Hawaii, this is my fancy notepad, and I was tagged in Vegan Tag by That Vegan Couple, who are definitely some of my favorite vegan YouTubers as far as like getting the message out there in a rational and kind way, and getting people to think a little bit deeper than they normally would, or at least like beyond themselves. Okay, so this vegan tag, I have a few questions that I have to go through. First and foremost, what is my favorite vegan quote? I'm not sure off the top of my head who said it, but, and I'm going to paraphrase here, it's something along the lines of humans have treated animals so badly that if animals had a religion, humans would be depicted as the devil. Always kind of struck a chord with me because it got me out of myself a little bit, and it got me out of my perspective as a human being as far as like how I view veganism, and instead it helped me to put myself in the place of animals a little bit more as far as, you know, what it must feel like from their perspective, because it's so easy for me to go, oh, those poor pigs, those poor cows, those poor animals, I have such sympathy for that. But me as a privileged white girl who is raised in suburbia, like, I have never really had a time in my life where I had to fear for my survival. Like, whether or not I was gonna make it, whether or not I was going to be killed by someone, never really entered my mind. Like, sure, there was some trauma, there was some abuse. You know, I had one particularly, like, shitty ex-boyfriend, and there was a period of a couple of days where I was like, is he gonna break into my house and try to kill me? I don't know. But as far as being in a position where I physically have to wonder about my fate, I've never been there. And that quote to me kind of helped to slip me into that situation of being in a position of like complete helplessness, and then having, you know, a devil take advantage of that helplessness and inflict torture and eventually, you know, take your life after having lived in fear. Okay, next question. What is your favorite, or I guess least favorite, hypothetical that, you know, an omnivore gives you when you're talking to them about veganism? Oh, I literally I hate them all. I don't know if it's like a hypothetical, but the one where it's like, well, plants have feelings too. And I made a whole video about it. I remember I always thought like only stupid people would say this. Like someone would have to be really dumb in order to have those words escape their mouth. But then I remember I was talking about veganism one day with my sister, who's someone that I know to be highly intelligent and logical and functional, and she said that to me. Like, well, plants have feelings. Aren't you worried about plant pain? I couldn't be vegan because, you know, plants feel too. I was just like, fuck. Maybe plants do feel pain, but it's like animals eat more plants so that we can then eat the animals. And animals have central nervous systems, so it's just like compounding the suffering exponentially by choosing not to be vegan. It's like choosing not to eat a cup of soybeans, but then feeding 300 pounds of soybeans to a cow and then eating the cow. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Agreed? Next question. My favorite meat replacement. Unfortunately, I don't have much to offer in the way of my favorite vegan meat replacements because I don't eat them. Similarly to That Vegan Couple, like, they just kind of creep me out. They're hyper palatable foods, so you end up wanting to eat a lot of them because they taste so good, and they're generally speaking pretty calorically dense, and they have added oils. And for me, at least, being in Hawaii, it's kind of like difficult and or / expensive for me to get vegan meat replacers. And also, when I eat them, they tend to like really screw up my digestive system. You know, I can go from having like flawless, regular, predictable digestion to like eating some of these meat replacers, and then I'm just like a gassy, bloated monstrosity of a human being for the next 3 days. It's like I'll eat the meat replacers and then I'll just be like, I just have to eat sweet potatoes and bananas for 3 days and try to blow this out. Overshare? Maybe. My favorite thing about this lifestyle is that I get to live in a way in which I am completely in harmony with my values and my beliefs and the principles by which I want to live my life. And that means that I get to live in a place of integrity. And what I have found over the years is that integrity is where you get your power. It's where you get your internal sense of motivation, your internal sense of self-worth, your internal sense of who you are and how you can stand strong in that. And so I found that over the years, when I tried to live outside of my integrity, either be that by, consuming animal products or by trying to be that like really compliant, agreeable person for other people, I felt such a sense of a loss of power and just it just felt like, the wind was sucked out of my sails and I felt like I had no core to hold me up. So by living in harmony with my values, my principles, my beliefs, my morals, I am able to cultivate that strong sense of integrity that gives me my power and gives me my ability to articulate and gives me my ability to stand in confidence and gives me my ability to stand in loneliness sometimes, because so often, unfortunately, living a life that is good and that is considerate of others, truly considerate of others, is often made fun of and chastised and belittled, or just like outright avoided by people who are made to feel uncomfortable by it. Along the same lines, one of my favorite things about veganism is that I don't have to disconnect myself throughout the day. Will Tuttle, who wrote The World Peace Diet, he talks about this a lot, about the habit of dissociation and sitting down to a meal 3 times a day that includes the bodies of animals that we claim to love requires a significant and profound dissociation, from our feelings and our logic thought. It's like we have to detach the two to be able to sit down and eat that kind of meal. Or even the dissociation that's required from, I remember I used to go to like a Chinese food buffet and just stuff myself silly on the worst foods. It had to have been just like, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of calories coming from grease and everything, and I knew it was unhealthy. I knew it was going to make me gain weight. I knew it was going to make me break out. I knew that it was going to be detrimental to me and my well-being, and yet I still did it. And that required dissociation. That required living outside of my integrity, and it didn't feel good. And so a lot of times people view this as like depriving yourselves, but in reality, it's not deprivation in the slightest. It's actually a huge enrichment to one's life when they're able to live a connected life and they're able to live in their own integrity and to tap into that power that is held within integrity. And so anyone who, does this diet and has committed to doing it in such a way that has allowed themselves to thrive knows what I'm talking about. It's not deprivation, it's enrichment. And I feel incredibly blessed to be able to live my life in such a way. And eating a diet that is in alignment with my beliefs allows me to do that. My least favorite thing about veganism is having to deal with everyone on the planet who just doesn't give a shit and doesn't want to hear about it, or makes like incredibly obtuse excuses. Like, I was listening to a podcast the other day and it had Steve-O and his dad on it, and Steve-O is like a gung-ho vegan, and his dad was sitting there making all of these excuses, like, oh, I watched Cowspiracy, but I just don't buy it because they're talking about water use. Why don't we just, instead of trying to get people to go vegan, why don't we just invest in desalination? And it's like, well, we can't just invest in desalination of seawater because A, it's highly complicated, B, it's only viable on the coasts, C, the oceans are dying because of carbon dioxide and other acidic greenhouse warming gases that are being expelled by these animals, and that's going to kill off the phytoplankton, and then once the phytoplankton die, the entire oceanic ecosystem is going to collapse, and we're not going to have a viable planet anymore. So it's like, just because we figured out the whole desalination of ocean water thing doesn't mean we're going to be able to address the catastrophic consequences of climate change as a whole. It's that kind of like symptomatic tiny little treatment thing that that a lot of people try to argue, where they just like pick apart stuff one tiny little argument at a time, and it's like you're not looking at the big picture. And unfortunately, I wish there was another way, but unfortunately the only solution seems to be like a big picture of changing our global dietary habits, and that will solve a lot of problems at once. And then we can talk about things like desalinating ocean water if we have to beyond that. I mean, he even used it as an excuse. He was like, well, it was like the oil boom, you know, everybody was worried about peak oil, but then we discovered fracking, and that's great, and now we don't have peak oil anymore. And it's like, yeah, but just because we discovered fracking, a way to continue our oil consumption unimpeded, doesn't mean that there aren't other consequences, like the freshwater, I can't think of the word when you like add something impure to something that's pure. I feel like it starts with a D. I cannot freaking remember it. Contamination. It starts with a C. The freshwater contamination that goes along with fracking. Like, completely doesn't acknowledge that, doesn't acknowledge that we're continuing this, like, this awful use of fossil fuels that's going to speed us towards climate change even faster. It's just not... You know, you just want to like slap people silly and be like, think better. Think better. Being vegan is easy. Living a vegan lifestyle is freaking easy. It's having that ability to see the world for what it is and being able to think larger, and then like constantly having to deal with fighting upstream of society. It's not impossible, but it's just like fucking unpleasant. Unless you thrive on conflict, in which case it's great for you. You'll love being vegan. So that is it for my vegan tag. I think I will choose to nominate Mike the Vegan because I would love to hear his perspective on this stuff. I've really been enjoying his incredibly well-researched, thorough, scientifically based videos on veganism and vegan health. I especially loved that blood type diet debunking that was done recently, because that is definitely one of the worst parts of being vegan. What about me? I'm a type O. Really? Why do you say such stupid shit? It is. It's hard to be in a relationship with me. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you for putting up with the odd video and audio quality and my little tilt there. I'm filming this on my tissue box tripod. Until next time, make better choices for yourself because nobody else is going to. Please leave your comments, questions, video ideas below. Take really, really, really good care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.